today's session on how you can build productively using modern development tools. So before I start, let me make a quick reminder to you all that today's session will also be discussing about a few features which may not be directly available on the platform at the moment. So if you are planning to make any purchase decisions, please base your decisions on what are generally available on the platform. I was in Sydney World Tour last year when LWC was first launched. I had an opportunity to meet Melbourne Architects Group then, and I have given an initial presentation on LWC at that point of time. And now today it's a great pleasure for me speaking to Sydney Developer Group, and I can see the crowd there. Like, no, I love the way the registrations went on, and the people are joining this session. And I'd like to thank you all for taking time out of your business schedule to join this session. I hope to make a valuable use of your time. Before we start the session, let me introduce myself. I'm Satya Sekhar, Senior Developer Evangelist from APAC Developer Relations team. And as part of my role, I motivate the developers to work on the platform. For that matter, everyone who is attending the session today, and also everyone who is working on the platform by themselves are evangelists, though I take salary for doing the evangelism. Just kidding. Okay, so let's start our session. In this session, we'll first explore SalesforceDX. We'll understand the development models. We'll check what is the latest in developer tooling. And then we will use SalesforceDX and the modern development tools to code, merge, test, and deploy a use case. So I'll take as simple a use case as possible, but at the same time, I'll try to cover as many tools as possible. And we'll finally see what is the future roadmap. Before going into the session, I want to ask a question if the poll is there. I saw a new feature yesterday. I'm not sure that feature is not generally available. So there was a feature yesterday, at least in the Salesforce internal Google Meets, to launch a poll, but no worries, because there are only few people, like 70, 80 people here. So I'd like to ask you a question. Do you use SalesforceDX for your development? You can answer yes or no in the chat. Awesome. Great. I'm getting many yeses and almost equally no's now as well. And there are a couple of sometimes, which is good. So let's see, what is SalesforceDX? Let me again go back here.
Was that one of your options, Satya, sometimes?
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. So yeah, well, you can build your application using different tools and development processes. That's what we do, whether it's Developer Console in general or any other Salesforce tools. But Salesforce, again, highly encourages the use of SalesforceDX for its rich suite of tools. But what is so great about it? To understand that, let us first see how a typical application lifecycle looks like. So I have to take clutter diagram. Don't worry, just see the concentrated circles there. So what do you do in a typical app lifecycle in general? You start with a plan to implement the project, build it, and release. And in this process, you work on different environments like build environment, testing environment, staging, and UAT environments before deploying it to the production, right? While you work on these environments, you may be working on different tools for coding, customization, building, and testing your applications. Now, how do you move code from one environment to the other environment? You have various options, including change sets. That's the primary option, I believe, and then metadata API, and also the latest packaging models. That is how the typical application lifecycle looks like. But what are the major concerns for the developers with that? There may be different developers working between different environments, leaving a possibility for conflicts between the environments. There might also be overlap of the environments with multiple configurations. One major problem that I see is there is no single source of truth in this model. By source of truth, I mean source code. You may end up having different set of source code in different environments, and it is very difficult to trace and fix it. This can also lead to inconsistent deployments. So what is the solution? Salesforce listen to you all, whether you are the developers who are working on the platform or you are the developers who refuse to use the platform also. Still, in the year 2015, Salesforce has come up with an initiative called SalesforceDX. The whole idea was to address the gap in tooling and the customer frustrations with our developer stack then. SalesforceDX is built on the key principles of modern software delivery. So here in this slide, you can see there are altogether 7 bubbles, right, which are the principles of the modern software delivery, with a focus on source-driven development. SalesforceDX makes it easier for developers to build together and deliver continuously using all the tools possible. And here, I'm not going to talk about all the bubbles, but these are the main principles. One of the primary principles I see here is the very first bubble, where everything has to be driven by source code. Normally, what happens is the source code, the source of truth for our source code, most of the times when we are using the org-based development, is our production org. And then different people work on different sandboxes, and again managing those things. If someone is sharing the say a particular sandbox, the code will be overwritten. So to overcome such kind of problems, we need to have a single source of truth. So that's where I'm going to start the session today. But other principles are to have an environment which should be easily disposable, and then your code should be modular. Okay, and wherever possible, you should be able to do the collaboration between the teams. And then development is based on the open source standards. So wherever possible, we'll have to get into the open source standards. And the processes should also facilitate your continuous delivery. And there should be proper packaging mechanism. So these are the 8 principles based on which we can define. Salesforce has come up with a SalesforceDX set of tools with which you can support all the across ALM processes. In the year 2017, we released this suite of products to fulfill the promise to modernize. And it provides tools for every phase, as I said, for the development, whether it is planning, coding, building, testing, or release. So SalesforceDX, as I said, is a promise, and it is now part of our DNA. The focus is on product success and increasing modernization. And SalesforceDX today is built on the key principles of modern software delivery. Now, as you can see here on these blue boards, SalesforceDX is open with support for open source, open roadmap, open ecosystem, and open tooling. And it also supports modern web standards, and it is source-driven primarily. It is accessible and provides DevOps for all and is flexible with the development models. Now let us see how we can use the SalesforceDX for our software development. But before that, let us see what are the different development models. Essentially, there are 2 development models. Org development model, which can otherwise be called as unpackaged development model, and the other one is packaged development model. As the slide shows, on the left side, in the org development model, the complete metadata lives within the production org. That's what I was talking about in my earlier slide. It's like a compartment holding everything in it. There is the release artifact in this model is a set of metadata changes, which is a delta related to what is there in your production org. The developers can use the sandbox to building the customizations and then migrate the change set to production. On the other hand, the package development model is a modern development model. The releases can be easily managed with this model as the changes are organized as packages supported by SalesforceDX. Before moving further, let's again do a very quick poll. So I want to ask a question here. Which development model do you use most in your day-to-day development activity or your projects? Is it org-based model, development model, or package-based development model, or you don't know which development model to use? So you can again answer here, org, package, org-based, org, okay. Both, mostly org-based, occasionally package. Awesome, both org-based. Great. So most of the people use org-based development model, and few use package-based model, and few use both the models, which is great. Now, let's try to understand what is org-based development model and what is package-based development model. If someone is who is very fresh, who doesn't know what is the fundamental difference between org-based and package-based development model, let's try to resolve that. Let us first see how the things work in the declarative org or org-based development model. Here, the code is promoted through the change sets, as you can see on the left side. And these change sets are promoted from the developer sandbox in the leftmost compartment to the developer pro sandbox in the build phase using setup UI. It is further promoted to the test and release phases. As you can see, you can use various kinds of sandboxes for different phases of development and move the changes across phases using change sets. Okay, then that is for the declarative approach purely. But what if you have a programmatic org development model? Again, here we use the org-based development model. This is where many people get confused between the org-based development model and the package-based development model. So in the case of programmatic org-based development model, we still use the version control system. You can see here at the bottom, we have something called as version source control system or version control system. So that is the major difference between your declarative org-based development model and the programmatic org-based development model, where you will be using the change sets still if you want, but here you will be primarily using the Salesforce CLI to deploy your application, deploy your source code. So here we use the commands like source deploy or source retrieve. But at the same time, if you want to deploy in the form of metadata API, you can convert it into metadata format rather than SalesforceDX format, and then deploy it using the respective commands like metadata API deploy and metadata API retrieve. So now let's see what is how package-based development model is different from the source development model. So here, package development model is source-driven development model, where code and configurations can be logically grouped into packages and released. It can be tracked in the source control. Updates can be released with new package versions. It supports scratch offs. So whatever I was talking about, the 7 principles of modern development. So one of the primary principles was the source-driven development that we have here, and ephemeral logs, that is the scratch offs that we have here. And you can use the CLI commands to push and pull the changes from the scratch offs. And most importantly, the package development model allows you to create self-contained applications or libraries that are deployed to your org as a single package. So that's all about the development models. Now let's see some developer tools and how we can use these developer tools for these development models in your day-to-day development activity. So here, if you can see that Salesforce platform ecosystem provides a rich set of tools for all the personas. Whether you are a business analyst or an admin, or you are a developer or an architect, you can build applications using a wide spectrum of tools from no code to low code to pro code. You have declarative tools like setup menu, change sets, and data loader. You can also use the programmatic tools like SalesforceDX, VS Code, Developer Console, and much more. Oops. Okay. So here I have put all together all the tools, platform development tools into one slide so that you can have a quick glance of what are the different tools that we have to develop on the Salesforce platform. How many of you use at least 80% of these tools? Okay, let me show the slide. You can just quickly see the slide while I also talk about the slide, and then I'll ask the question again. Here you can see a landscape of platform development tools supported by SalesforceDX. At the very bottom, you can see that you can use GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab, or for that matter, any kind of the source control that you like. It supports Jenkins, Circle CI, and other tools for test automation. It provides trusted environments. At the second layer, you can see there, you can securely build applications using scratch offs and sandboxes. You can also protect the sensitive data using data mask. You can control the access using permission sets and profiles. DevOps Center is one of our newest products to facilitate admins to collaborate with the developers over version control system. SalesforceDX supports managed packages, unlock packages, and Heroku Flow. You can use open developer tooling to build your applications. You can use tools like Salesforce extensions for VS Code, CLI, Oakleaf, local development, and language servers for Apex, LWC, etc. You can also use the low-code builders like App Builder, Flow Builder, Schema Builder, and Process Builder. This is in fact like a quick run through of all the tools possible. Now, I'd like to hear from you. How many of you are using at least 70%, or let us put it the other way. How many of you are using open developer tooling? So it's a simple question. If you are using open developer tooling, like extensions for VS Code and stuff, you can say yes, otherwise you can say no.
Just a quick question, Satya, on DevOps Center. Is that GA and available for everyone?
Not yet.
Okay.
Great. It's great to see that most of you are already using Visual Studio Code, while I still see some of the people are not using the Visual Studio Code Salesforce extensions. I'll try to show, I'll try to address both kind of audiences, mostly no and yes as well. Let me do that. So here, today I'm going to build an application, or at least a small use case where we can leverage the SalesforceDX we'll see how to use the Salesforce CLI and VS Code to build the applications. We'll also use the local development for our development process. As I said, we are going to use the Salesforce extensions for VS Code. Let us see what all different things that we can do with VS Code. Again, a very quick poll. How many of you are using local development? Say, if you are using, say yes, otherwise no. Okay. Okay, many no's, not yet, few yes, that's great. Today we'll see how beneficial it will be to use the local development environment. And as I said, I'm going to use the Salesforce extension pack, and we are going to use the local development. As you see in this diagram, we are going to use the Salesforce CLI as well. So let's see what are the different tools that we have in the Salesforce extension pack. So Salesforce extension pack on VS Code supports version control. It supports Salesforce CLI and source tracking with respect to your scratch org. Like if you make any changes in your scratch org, you want to see the difference or delta of the changes with respect to your local code with the scratch org. You can see the difference as well. You can also debug production issues using Apex Replay Debugger on the logs. You can test Apex as well as LWC components using the Jest framework. And the test is well integrated into the Visual Studio Code now. You can run your Jest tests just like your Apex tests with our latest tools in your Visual Studio Code Salesforce extensions. It supports various languages like including LWC, Aura, Visualforce, and it has SLDS support, Apex, and Sockle. You can also load the data using a subject tree API and also run the Sockle queries right from your Visual Studio Code. We'll see most of these things in our demo there. And that is a lot of talking. Let us see how we can use some of these features and how we can develop the applications. So, yep, here I'm in my GitHub repository. Hope everyone is able to see my screen because I just switched to another desktop.
Yep.
Cool. Great. Okay. So here I'm in my repository, and as I said, I want to make it a source-driven development. So I always want to keep my source of truth itself as a version control system. So let's start from our version control system. Let's click on new here. I want to create a new repository. Let us call that as a Sydney demo to easily identify. So when you create a new repository, you are provided with various options, whether you want to make your repository public or you want to make it as private, you want to add a README file, or you want to add a git ignore file, or you want to choose a license. If you want to make it as a open source project, then probably you want to choose some kind of open source license as well. For now, I'm not going to choose any of these things, and I'll click on create repository. Okay, so a repository is created here, and you can see it has various tabs. So if you want to implement your own continuous delivery, continuous integration stuff, you can do that as well. You want to organize it as projects, you can do that as well, and you can collaborate with other team members. So here I want to make a small, I want to make a small thing clear between Git and GitHub. There's a confusion between Git and GitHub for many people. Git is basically a version control system where you can use all kinds of Git commands to push, pull the source code into your version control system or out of the version control system. Well, GitHub is a place where you can store all your repositories and collaborate with your teams on those repositories. So I'm currently in my GitHub, and this GitHub supports Git, and we are going to use those Git commands in our development process. And here, when you create your repository for the very first time, it provides you different options. In fact, you can create your a folder in your local system where you can run all these commands. You can run git init, and then you can add a README file, commit it, and then you can add a origin where, like, this particular repository has the origin where you are going to push your code and retry the source code from. There are all set of commands that you need to run in order to use the GitHub repository. But today we are not going to do that. I'm not going to use any of these commands to get the repository into my version control system. So let's see how we can do that into my Visual Studio Code environment. So let's see how we can do that. So here I'm in the Visual Studio Code environment, as I already got feedback from your poll that many of you are already using the Visual Studio Code environment, and you know very much about the Salesforce extensions pack as well. Let's see what are the new things that have come up in the Salesforce extensions and how we can make your development easy. So when you launch your Visual Studio Code environment, you see this welcome screen. On the left side, this is called as the activity bar, from where you can launch different kinds of activities, whether you want to open a file explorer or you want to see the extensions in the marketplace. So you can launch any of these activities from the activity bar. And at the center, you can see an editor where you can run your code. And then once you open any of these activities, once you open a file here, you'll also have a context menu on the top right, which we'll see in a short while, from where you can run different commands. And one more important thing is you can launch a terminal here by going here, clicking terminals, a new terminal, or you can use your shortcut keys. I'll use the shortcut key here to launch my terminal, where you can run different Salesforce CLI commands. Okay, so you can also see the output from the Salesforce CLI. You can also see if there are any problems in your source code, so on and so forth. And one of the important thing is the status bar at the bottom here, which is going to act like a dashboard for us, where you can see the status of your code, whether you are pushing the code, pulling the code, or whether you are in a master repository, master branch, or you are in some other branch. All the information will be displayed in the status bar. Currently, we don't have any project created, so we are not seeing anything here. So let's go ahead and let's start working on our project. So here, you have two options. One is open folder. If you are already used the GitHub commands, which I was referring to in the GitHub repository there, if you have already run those commands, created a project there, you can directly open that folder here and start working on your project. If not, you can also clone the repository from the GitHub repository. You can go here, copy this repository location. So I just copy this location and I'll click on clone repository. I'll paste that URL here, press enter. So I can save my project anywhere. For now, I'll save it on my desktop. So it's saved. Let's open it. There you go. Now you can see this is the demo folder, right? At the bottom, taskbar, I'm not sure whether it is visible or not, but here you can see something called as master. So which indicates that I'm currently on the master branch. And in the activity bar, you can see a icon for your source control system where you can click and see if there are any changes in your file. So let's do one thing. Let's create a SalesforceDX project. So how do we create the project? You can do it by using the command palette. There are different ways to launch the command palette. You can launch it from your menu here. From your view, you can launch the command palette, or again, you can use your shortcut key. If you are on Windows, it is Control-Shift-P. If you are on Mac, it is Command-Shift-P. So let us create a SFDX project. And for that, in fact, if you type SFDX, these are the different commands that are currently available. Again, these are context sensitive. If you open the project, these commands change. You'll get more commands here to run. So let's create a SFDX project. So let's make it as a standard SalesforceDX project. Let's give the name as same Sydney _ demo. Press enter. Again, task for the location. I'll use the same desktop location. Let's say create project. I'll overwrite it because I'm creating the project altogether. And now here you can see that it has created a SalesforceDX structure for us, and everything is in green color. And you can see there are some files which are untracked files. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's quickly commit these changes. So we have just created our project. Let's see how we can easily commit all the changes from our Visual Studio Code environment directly into our GitHub repository. So here what I'll do is, I will, let us call it as first commit. Okay, so here you can see a tick mark with which you can commit. And there is also a context sensitive menu here, which if you click, you can see different options. Again, this menu is recently changed. Earlier, you would have if you would have worked on this, you would have seen a number of options which are cluttered, very big, long menu here. But these menu items are now classified into different types of items. Okay, so I can commit the changes and I can push the changes and all. So let me click on commit. Okay, it says there are no staged changes. It gives us warning. So let us stage the changes first. So how do you stage the changes? You can click on plus mark. It is as good as running git add dot command in your terminal. So now you can see that the icon changed from U to A, which indicates that we have staged the changes. Now let's commit the changes. And there was a blue line which was going from left to right here, which indicates it is trying to commit, and that is gone now. So which means it's already committed. Now let's push the changes. That's it. So while it is pushing, you can see a blue line there, and there is also an icon here which revolves, which indicates it's currently pushing, but now it stopped. So it means that your code is already pushed. So let's go there and let's refresh our repository. And here you can see our first commit is there. And you can see all the files of our SalesforceDX project. Now let's go ahead and see how we work with the version control system when we are working on a feature. It's not a good practice to commit all your changes to the master. Master has to be safe, secure. So for that, what we'll do is we'll create our own branch for creating our component. So today I'll create a Lightning Web component which displays a list of rows or list of records. We can create it for, say, whatever custom object or standard object. We'll see what best we can do. So let me go here. And yeah, I want to switch to a different branch. So what I can do here is you can go to the left bottom where you can see master, click on that. It launches the command palette, context sensitive help here, and you can switch to create a new branch right from here. And you can also notice that it shows the master branch and it shows the origin, both pointing to some address location. So let's create a new branch. Let's call that branch as let me call it as contacts feature. So some feature I want to call it as a feature branch. So whatever name you intend to give, you can give that name. So let me give contacts feature and press enter. And now you can see that we are in the contact feature branch. You can also verify that from your terminal. Here you can type the command, say git status, and you can see that you are currently on the branch contact feature where you can start working. So let's go ahead and let's create a component here. So I'll go into the file explorer, or I can even close the file explorer. Let me launch the command palette. Let me run the SFDX command to create a lighting web component. And yeah, this is one thing I want to tell. I just wanted to create a lighting web component, but I'm not seeing the SFDX command for creating the lighting web component. I'm seeing the same old 4 commands here. So this is one common problem with Visual Studio Code in general. I don't even say that it's a problem, because once you make any changes, it's always a good idea to refresh or reload the things. So if you see anything like this, you can reload it, reload your window. Now I reloaded window. Now let me launch the command palette again and let me type SFDX command. Now I'll be able to see all the commands here. So let's create a lighting web component. And let's give a name. Let's call it as a contact list component. And I'll select the default folder. That's it. It has created a contact list component, and it wants me that there is no default org set. Okay, create a default scratch org, because I want to, I'm working on the SalesforceDX project, lighting web components, and yeah, it helps me, like, no, it says you better create a scratch org and start working on this so that you can push the changes there. So how do you select a default scratch org? You'll have to set one of the orgs as your default dev hub. Let us see SFDX force. Again, I want to also show you some Salesforce CLI commands. Now with your Visual Studio Code integrated terminal, and in fact, with Salesforce CLI installed on your system, even in your normal terminal, you can have a auto completion of the command. I just typed SFDX force. If I don't remember the command name, I can press tab and again tab once more, and you can see that it gives the complete possibilities. Okay, so here I want to say org and press tab again. It shows me all the commands related to SFDX force org. Then I can simply list here, because this is the command I was looking for, where I can list all the orgs. So yeah, while it does, so you can click on no default org set, and you can see if you can, there will be a list of orgs from where you can select one of the orgs as the default org. If you're not working on a scratch org, and if you're working on a directly on your developer edition or your sandbox, then you can probably your sandbox will be listed here, and you can see the select the sandbox from here. So what I'll do here is I'll select one of the orgs as my dev hub org, because in order to create the scratch org, there should be a dev hub org. So let's say SFDX force config set. This is one command. Again, with the recent release, the upcoming release, in fact, when I say upcoming release, I'm referring to the winter 21 release. But again, for Salesforce developer tools, whether it is Salesforce CLI or Visual Studio Code Salesforce extensions, it really doesn't depend upon the releases. Okay, what it does is it has a weekly release cadence. It releases its new features every week. So you can see all the updates which will be there in your winter 21 right now on your system here itself. So with the latest release, you need not really type Salesforce SFDX force :config. You can directly use config. So now we are trying to move the commands towards more open source. So we are segregating it into different types of commands. So all the configuration commands sit in config namespace. So when I say SFDX config, it automatically fills with force config for now, because there are few people who doesn't switch immediately. Those people can still use the old commands. So let me say SFDX force config set. I want to use default dev hub username equal to dev hub. Okay, so yeah, it has set this has the default dev hub username, and now you should be able to see the list of orgs here, and for one of the orgs which I have selected as the default dev hub org, it shows a D here. Okay, and then Now, when I launch this no default or from here, when I launch the command palette, it shows all the scratch offs that are there that are related to my dev hub org as well. Okay, so I can create a scratch off, but to save some time here, I've already created a scratch off for you. Let me use that scratch off for today. So I'm setting that scratch off as the default dev hub scratch off. Now that we have created our very first component, let's go and make some changes to that component. So how do you go to different elements of the component? You know that a Lightning Web component is made up of a HTML file, a JavaScript file, and a meta file. So how do you go there? You can open the File Explorer and you can go to that particular component and start working on that. Or the other best option would be to enable the breadcrumb. Let me close this terminal for now. So I can open the setup settings file. You can go to the menu item file and then go to settings and open the settings here. Or you can use command comma if you're using Mac system, or control comma if you're using Windows system to launch your settings. And you can search for something called as breadcrumb. So I'll enable the breadcrumb here. And if I go back to the contact list.html, so here you can see now at the top the complete path of your file. You can click on contact list.js. It shows the files in your contact component. So in the contact list, you have HTML, JS, and meta file. So you will easily navigate from here. So let's go ahead and then here let's simply say hello world for now, just to understand how the things work. And my intention here is not to talk about the Lightning Web component and how to create the Lightning Web components, rather about how to use the developer tools efficiently. So now I've created a hello world component. How do I see the output of this component? One option is to push it to the scratch out and see the output. The other option is to use the local development to see the output. So for that, you can launch your command palette and you can type something called as preview. So when you say preview, you have an option called preview component locally. When you click this option, now with the latest set of releases, you can see that you have 3 different options. You can launch your local development on your desktop browser, or you can launch on your mobile phones as well. I'll show both the options. Let's first launch using the desktop browser. When I click this, it launches my local browser in the desktop. It in fact starts the local development server on a particular port. So it can again be configurable. For now, it is configured as 3333, and you can see the output here. So this is one option. The other option is, okay, let me move this to another desktop. Okay, so the other option of looking at that component is by using the simulator. Let me open. So again, there are different ways to launch your preview. If you are in your JavaScript file, you can even launch your preview right from here. And let me select Android emulator. And I've already installed an emulator there. And you can find all the instructions on how to set up the Android or iOS emulator for your system in the LWC developer guide documentation. Okay, it starts up. Probably it takes a little bit of time, and it launches the component there. But while it launches, we'll see other features for while you work on, say, Apex development or on your JavaScript development, how the things can be made easy using the Salesforce extensions. So let's go ahead. And for this, I want to work on, say, I want to create a contact list controller, which gets the contact records and shows here. So for that, what I can do is I can, again, launch the command palette, and I can create a Apex class. Let's call it as context controller or contact list controller, whatever it is, contact controller, contact list controller. Press enter. Okay, I've created, in fact, my Android emulator is launched, if I'm not wrong. I don't see it here. No worries. We'll launch it again a little later, or we'll launch it once again. Okay, While it launches, let's go back to the contact list controller and see how easily we can write the methods here. So here I want to create a Aura enabled method. For that, again, I can launch the command palette, and then I can use a command called insert snippet. And let's say Aura enabled Apex method. So let me click that. It gives you the boilerplate code for writing your Aura enabled method. So you can select whether it's public or global. So for me, it is public. And then I want to return a list of contacts. So I can say contact here. And I can give a name. So let me say get contact list. Okay. And I can write a query here. So I can say return SOQL query. Here. So I want to test the SOQL query. So how the query works, then only I want to use the query here. I can do that when you create your SalesforceDX project. And let me collapse everything here. This is the project structure. You might find something called as scripts folder here. So the benefit of scripts folder is you can write any of the script. Maybe you want to check how the Apex commands work. You want to check run an anonymous Apex code. You can do that. It gives a sample of anonymous Apex code. You can write your own anonymous Apex code and see how it works, just like how do you do it in your developer console. So you can select this Apex code, and then you can say, you can open the command palette and say Apex. You have a command called execute anonymous Apex with currently selected text. When you select that, it runs your Apex and it gets all your output here. Okay. Similarly, there is a SOQL directory where you have, say, a sample SOQL file called account.soql. So now I want to work on, say, contacts. So I'll copy it and I'll paste it here. I'll create a contact.soql file here. Let us rename it as contact.soql. And so this I want to say contact. And you may want to use different types, right? Different types of queries. You can always save your queries here and refer to the queries back whenever you want. And you can see, you can also run the SOQL query by launching the command palette and see the results. So here you can use the REST API or tooling API. I'm using the REST API. It runs the SOQL query here. And I get the results. Okay, so my SOQL query is working. I can copy the SOQL query, go back to my contact list controller class and paste it here. That's it. So this is a very small method, but you can write, you have different options when you use insert snippet. When you are in the Apex class, it shows all the possible options for the Apex class. Similarly, if you go to the contact list.js, and again, if you launch the insert snippet here, and you have various options related to the JavaScript. So you can get the boilerplate code for each, for in, do while, whatever. And not only that, if you want to use your Apex class method here, so let me say import something from, when I open this quotes, it shows me a context sensitive help. I can select the Apex method right from here. It shows all the possibilities, and I'm going to use this method in my application to get that contact list and save it here. And then you can also while there is some problem with my simulator for now. It is not launching, but no worries. I'm going to do another session next week on Tailhead Live. If I'm unable to show the simulator here, don't worry. I'm going to show the simulator again there. And I'll show you all the possible options. It just looks like this, but you'll be seeing a mobile phone. Okay. Yeah, probably my simulator is not working currently because I did not start my Android Studio. So I just restarted my system. Again, I don't want to waste time starting my Android Studio. Let's see other productivity features here. So here, in the contact list.
Sorry, just cautious of time tapping in.
Yeah, yeah.
We have 10 minutes.
Yeah. I got it. That's the reason I'm skipping that. Okay. So when you say here, I said you can use the insert snippets. There are other options as well. You can, in fact, launch the IntelliSense for the LWC components by typing LWC there. Here, I want to use a wire adapter. So I will say, let me say LWC, and I'll say wire, and it gives me all the possibilities. So I want to wire a property to a method name. So I'll use this method name, press tab, give some name, say contacts, and that's it. Now you have your wire method. Okay, so you have a skeletal code for everything that you do. And if you see here, it also shows a red color squiggle. When I select this at the bottom, here you can see that it says invalid decorator usage because I have not used wire decorator. I have used the wire decorator, but I have not declared it. So let's go ahead and declare wire here and save it. And there you can see that the problems went off. Okay, similarly, you can go to the HTML file, and in HTML file also you can create your own snippets. For instance, the snippets which you are seeing currently here are called as standard snippets. When I'm running, say, wire property in JS or the creating of the Apex method, so I'm using some kind of standard snippets. But you can also write your custom snippets. For instance, I've written a custom snippet here for the HTML file. If I go back to the HTML file very quickly, I'll show you here. I have a custom snippet where I can run say for each loop. When I say for each, it gives me the complete skeletal structure for each. Similarly, we have the custom snippets for the meta file as well. So here I can set it to true if I want to push it to my scratch all. And I can also, I have written snippets, say I use LWC, I say targets, and I say LWC target app page, you can see I'm easily creating this structure for myself. So you can also define the custom snippets. I leave it to you to explore the custom snippets, but sooner or later, maybe in a month's time, I'll also come up with a session specifically dedicated to the custom snippets where I'll show you how easy it is to create the custom snippets and work with them. So once you have done this, at least latest changes very quickly, let's push it to our GitHub repository. You can see all the changes here. I'll add the changes for now, and new component, and then I'll commit these changes. It says that there are, so let's say all and commit. So what it does is, if there is no branch by the name contact feature branch, it is going to ask us to create that branch there, and it creates a branch and it pushes everything there to your, let me push it here. It says the branch is not available in your GitHub repository. So let's say, okay, publish. So what it does is it creates a branch in your GitHub repository. So it's still pushing. So it's done. If you refresh here, you can see that it has created a branch in your GitHub repository. You can also compare and pull and generate a pull request. And not only that, here you can see that if you have set up a what we call a continuous integration, continuous delivery, those rules also will be run. You can collaborate with your colleagues. You can make the comments and then merge the changes into your master repository. There's a whole lot of things that are shown in this demo. And again, we are almost running out of time. So let me quickly show you what is the future roadmap. So here in this slide, you can see what is it today. What demo I've given today is based on the flow diagram there shown in today, where in order to use your Visual Studio Code, probably you have to get the approvals from your org and then install the stuff and start working on it. But we are launching Code Builder, with which you are going to launch your Visual Studio environment with a click. Just like any other application, you can launch your Code Builder right from your app launcher. There will be a separate app kind of thing called Code Builder there. When you launch that, it's going to launch a Visual Studio Code environment. And this environment we have introduced. Currently, it is in the internal pilot. So hopefully, you'll be able to see it in another 4 or 5 months. And this diagram, if you see, it looks very familiar. It is the same slide. I copy pasted from my earlier slide. The only thing I've done is I've added something called as Code Builder. So what does that mean? Code Builder is going to provide you whatever you are doing in your Visual Studio Code. All those features will be available right from your Code Builder. And it's not just for the programmatic developer, but for also the administrators who can run the SOQL queries and other stuff. They can connect it to the your what you call operations center and directly run their deployments right from the Code Builder itself. So it's for everyone. And yeah, last but not least, you can always refer to the Trailhead. And that's from where I keep learning. You also keep learning from the Trailhead. There are a number of badges on tooling as well as lighting web components. And you can also refer to these GitHub links. Again, I'm going to share these slides along with one more session, which I'm going to do in Trailhead Live next week. With that said, any question and answers, we have only a couple of minutes here, but don't worry, I'll try to answer your questions as many possible here. If not, you can also send your questions through DM to my Twitter handle.
So one of the questions there, Satya, is Code Builder a licensed one, or is it open source and free?
Code Builder license. Currently, it is going to be a part of a license. It's not exactly free, but with license, that's the plan. And yeah, probably again forward looking. But yeah, the current plan is it is called as freemium. It's kind of you'll be getting the Code Builder along with your existing license. Yep. Any other questions?
And there's one from Craig about org-dependent unlock packages. It's there in the chat window.
When might they come out of beta? Why are they restricted to Developer Pro sandboxes? Again, it is a difficult question for me to answer. Probably I'll have to reach out to the product managers about that. And yeah, Craig, I'll get back to you soon with the answers to your questions, probably through Twitter. Any other questions, friends?
I think everyone's quiet. We have 2 more minutes. If anyone wants to raise any questions on the demo being presented. Cool. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining in, and thanks Satya for taking time and presenting this. Wish you all the best for your next Trailhead Live session, and we'll come back again with our next meetup. Thanks everyone. Enjoy your rest of the evening. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your rest of the evening. And if you have any questions, if I missed any of your questions there, please post it. Try to reach me on my Twitter. Thank you so much.